Example 1c, it involves multiplication on surd. And before we can go on with the multiplications calculations, what I need to do is that I need to have the idea on some of the multiplication rules that happens in surd. First of all, if let's say I happens to have two surd which have different content inside, let's say square root of A multiplies square root of B. So the result will happen to be, I can combine them under a square root, and each of the item inside the square root, I take them, undergo the operations of multiply. This will happen similarly for the case of divide. But since divide doesn't happen in this example, so I doesn't discuss further on that. And let's say it happens that not just surd term itself, I have some integers that multiply with surd. For example, I have c square root of A multiply b square roots of, let's say we take d square root of b. Then how is the result of the calculations can be done is that, you notice, in the case of multiplication, we just focus our multiplication in such that we consider the initial result, we consider the integer outside, multiply the integer outside. So we have CD, and then this result, this multiplication result CD, it will further multiply with the multiplications result of the third term, which is square root of AB. Then, one more thing that we need to take notes here is that when the time you happen to encounter, if let's say you have a multiplications of the same surd, let's say we talk about the simple one, just the surd itself, square root of A multiply square root of A, and this will give us the result as square root of A square, and therefore the result will just equals to A itself. Of course, in your calculation later, whenever you encounter this, you can directly give the answer as A lah. But take notes, provided your A is happen to be a positive number, as well as your B for the previous rules there. If happens to be the content inside the square root is negative, then we need to refer to complex number. And now back to our question for the multiplication. So how I will usually do for multiplications here, this is the way that I do expansion. Maybe you have another way. So I will consider the first brackets in front here, I will break it into two parts, as I highlighted in purple and yellow, and be aware the second part I need to consider the sign in front. So if it's a plus, I consider plus square root of 2. If minus, I consider minus square root of 2. Then the next thing I do is that I do my expansion, where I take the part that highlight in purple, multiply with the part highlighted in blue, and let us slowly observe the result of it. Square root of 3 multiply 2 square root of 3, based on what we happens to learn just now in these properties here. Our multiplications will happen in the way that square root multiply with square root, and you notice that the two square root is the same. It comes into the third things that I mentioned just now. So as a result, it will happen to have 2 times square root of 3 squared. This is our initial answer. Then square root of 3 multiplies square root of 2. When the time the yellow part multiply with the one in blue, square root of 2 multiplies square root of 3. Square root of 2 multiplies square root of 2. So this is the initial result that we have as a beginner. Of course, when the time you are advanced enough, the step written in red is no longer needed. We can just directly go for the next line, where we have the result as 2 times 3, square root of 3, square it, we get 3. Square root of 3 multiplied square root of 2, we have it as 6. 2 times square root of 2 square root of 3, so the square root multiply each other give me square root of 6. 2 square root of 6 as over. The overall result, square of square root of 2, 2. And now, back to the addition rules that we happened to learn in the previous example. I consider the sum of the integers and the sum of the surd term. In here, we have the common surd terms. So, we have 2 times 3, it happens to 6. 6 plus 2, I have the result as 8. And then square root of 6 plus 2 square root of 6, it will be 3 square root of 6. Okay, proceed further. D. D, we need to apply the things that we know about multiplication, and also in order to make the calculation fast, for the case that we're having square terms like this, we need to recall on the algebraic calculation such that m minus n square will equals to m square minus 2mn plus n square. And this is the things that we happen to learn in secondary level, and in these questions here, I would like the arrangement arranged in such that I want the m square and n square stick together side by side. And the reason why I do that is because later in our calculation, this is the part that we have free of surd term. The surd is gone in this part here with square. And let's have a look on our calculations. So we consider m as if like 3 square root of 3. We consider n as if like 5 square root of 2. So by the time we expand according to this, we have the m square, 3 square root of 3 square, plus with the n square, 5 square root of 2 square, minus 2 times of 3 square root of 3, multiplied with 5 times of square root of 2. Okay. Again, the step in red is just as a reference step lah, as a beginner. Then now, we go for the next part. How we happen to have the answer simplified. So 3 square root of 3 in here, just a precautions. If let's say you happen to have the surd term happen in such that, let's say you have b times square root of a, and I want this term here to be squared. The result will happens to be, I need to square the b, I need to square the square root, and this is the result. Don't misunderstood that the square is just meant for the purpose of get rid of the square root. That is not proper. So you need to square both of the term, as both of the term have the relationship of multiply. And again, if it happens to be divide, it have the same ideas also. But since division is not discussed in this example here, so I doesn't go further. Go on. So as a result, I will have it as 9 times 3, 25 times 2. Then behind, consider the multiplication of the integer I highlight. Negative 2, 3, 5 multiply, I get negative 30. Followed by the multiplication of square root of 3 and square root of 2. We get square root of 6. Simplify everything. You have 9 times 3, 27, 50, 27 plus 50, 77 minus 30 square root of 6.